When do you use no? And when do you use not in English? We'll help you understand the difference in this episode of
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome. My name's Craig.
My name's Reza.
And if you are a new listener, you're very, very welcome to the podcast. With over 45 years of teaching between us, Reza and I are going to help you grow your grammar, vocalize your vocabulary, and perfect your pronunciation, taking all your English to the next level. How are you?
I'm fine, Craig. Can't complain. Happy enough. What about you?
The same. Very good. We have a voice message this week from Veronica from Ibi in Alicante, a place that has very fond memories for me because last year I went to the IES school, La Foilla, in Ibi to do a presentation on podcasting. So hello to Irene from that school, and I hope you're doing well. Let's listen to Veronica's voice message.
Hello guys, how are you? My name is Veronica and I live in Ibi, a small town in Alicante. I love English and I usually listen to your podcasts because they are really enjoyable. It's amazing as I can learn and enjoy at the same time. I listened to you for 2 years, but I have never sent a voice message. This summer I'm going to visit London for the first time, so I would like to know something about it before going. Could you please give me some useful information? I'm going to arrive to Gatwick Airport and my hotel is located near the British Museum. How can I travel to my accommodation? I have been told that there is a train, but it is quite expensive, and for this reason it's better to catch a bus. Thank you very much, Craig and Reza. I'm very happy to speak with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your message, Veronica, all the way from Ibi in Alicante. By the way, Reza and I would be happy to speak at your school about podcasting and education. Even if you live in Argentina, Mexico, Uruguay, Cuba, we don't mind as long as you pay for our airfare. We'd be happy to come and speak about podcasting at your school as I did in Ibi last year. So, Reza, Veronica's question. Well, before we answer her question, did you hear anything that she could improve?
Yes, you made a little mistake, Veronica, with your verb tense. You said, I listened to you, I think for 2 years or something like that. I listened to you. No. I have been listening. It needs to be present, perfect, continuous, because it started in the past and you've been doing it continuously up to now. So I have been listening to you.
But your message was very clear. It was very good. I understood everything that you said, Veronica. Thank you. And you must be very excited because you're going to London in the summer. That's wonderful. And Veronica has to get from Gatwick to London. She's arriving at Gatwick Airport and she has to get to the centre of London. How can she do it? Well, there is an express train that gets you there very quickly. It gets you to Victoria Station in 30 minutes. It's the Gatwick Express train. And there will be a link to that in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/199. Although it is a little bit expensive. It's £18, £18 per person. So if you're traveling with your family, Veronica, and you have a couple of kids, you multiply that by 4, that's quite expensive. Although there is a 10% discount if you book your ticket online through their website.
Yes, but Veronica, you're quite right. As you said in your message, it is a bit expensive. You said that yourself. And you can take another train, which is cheaper. But they probably, maybe I'm a bit cynical, but possibly on purpose, don't advertise it very much. But you don't have to get the Gatwick Express train. There are other trains which go to the centre of London, which are much, much cheaper. And they leave from Gatwick Airport. I know because I took one a couple of years ago, and they cost literally half the price or less.
But how long does the journey take?
Instead of 30 minutes, it might take 45. But so what? To save £15 or something, or £10, I'd do it. In fact, I did it.
You're on holiday, you can look out the window, look at the other passengers and enjoy the extra 15 minutes on the train. Now, when you get to the centre, let's say you're arriving at Victoria Station, you then need to get the underground, or the tube, as they say in London, to your accommodation near the British Museum. Now, the British Museum is kind of in the middle of 4 underground stations, 2 of which are Holborn and Tottenham Court Road, both on the Central Line. That's the red line. And you need to get a separate ticket to go there by underground to where your accommodation is. Are there any other options of transport apart from the train?
Yes, I believe there's a bus run by EasyBus. So EasyJet's the airline and their sister company is EasyBus for buses. I think it runs 7 days a week and it operates from the North Terminal. Gatwick has 2 terminals, North and South. So this one is from the North Terminal, leaving from stops number 10 and 11. And you can find out information about that if you go to easybus.com/en/London-Gatwick. Dash is Guionet.
And that link will be, of course, in the show notes. But if you're traveling with other people, Veronica, you might want to consider or think about the taxi. Because if there are 4 or 5 of you, then you divide the taxi fare, the cost, between the number of people. And of course, you can say to the taxi driver, can you take us on the scenic route? Can we see some sights on the way to the hotel? So you get to see London from the window of the taxi and you're not underground on the train. So that could be another possibility. We've also included a general information link from Gatwick Airport to London, and that link will be in the show notes, as I said, at inglespodcast.com/199.
Craig, about the taxi, I've just got a practical consideration. Have you ever taken a taxi from Gatwick Airport to London yourself?
Yes, when I went there with my friend Lewis and Manoli, we shared a taxi, but there were 6 of us, so we shared a big taxi. It was a lot cheaper than paying for separate tickets, and you get to see the River Thames, the Houses of Parliament, go through the centre of London, so you see the sights, and it works out cheaper.
Here's my big question now. Was it on a meter or was it a fixed price?
It was a fixed price from the airport.
That's what you want, Veronica. I would suggest I wouldn't go in a taxi with the meter, El Contador, on, because if you hit heavy traffic, that's the money's just building up and building up. I would agree the price before you get in, not on a meter. It's going to cost you a lot of money on a meter.
And there are websites that you can find on Google, if you Google Gatwick Airport taxis, that will agree the price with you. So you make the reservation, you reserve the taxi before you arrive. And of course, a taxi has the advantage of taking your suitcases, your luggage, from door to door. So you don't have to carry your heavy suitcases when you're changing trains or walking to the hotel.
One thing though, I imagine a train is quicker than a taxi. Even if it's the cheap train that stops like the one I got, I imagine it's still going to be quicker than a taxi, is it?
Very possibly. Again, depending on what time of day. If it's the rush hour, la hora punta, then yeah, probably much better to take the train. But if you're arriving very early in the morning or late at night, then I would consider a taxi. And finally, Veronica, why not listen to a podcast Reza and I did about 10 top things to do in London? That was episode 104. So why don't you listen to some advice and tips and ideas of things to see in London? inglespodcast.com/104.
Maintenant, on continue avec un message de Pilar. I'm sorry. I was mucking with you. Pilar. No, we're not doing a French podcast. Well, we couldn't with such a terrible accent. We have a message from our listener in France, Pilar Martinez. Hi, Pilar. How are you?
This message came in from Pilar by email, but please send us another voice message, Pilar, because we love to hear your accent. And this is Pilar's message. I have a question. In the two following sentences, Mr. Thomas was to come for lunch last Monday, and we are to follow the signposts to Guildford. I don't understand the use of the verb to be. I don't see the meaning, says Pilar. What time is it? I think she means what tense. Tiempo verbal. What tense is it? Thanks in advance, Pilar. Reza, infinitives, aren't they?
Well, it's infinitive, but maybe I think she's asking could we do it another way? Yes. Obviously, this expression is less common than other expressions you know. That's why you don't know what it means. Mr. Thomas was to come for lunch means Mr. Thomas was going to come for lunch. Mm-hmm. You could put in the word going. And we are to follow the signpost to Guildford. That one's a bit trickier. That's a bit trickier. That would be we are supposed to follow. So they're both expressions about the future, but they can be expressions about the future in the past. Let me explain myself. Mr. Thomas was to come for lunch last Monday. Well, last Monday's finished. It's not the future. But he was going to come. That was his future plan at some stage, but he didn't come. He was going to come. He was to come, but it didn't happen.
Next, we have a voice message from Kike from Valencia. Hello, Kike.
Hello, this is Kike from Valencia, as you guys. So I'm very grateful for all you have done for me because I'm improving my English a lot. So thank you. I would like to know if you can answer to me two grammar questions. The first one is about a question test, and it is said, it's stuffy here. Shall I open the window? A, do. B, it is. C, you do. And D, you solve. And the correct answer is do. Why not is the correct answer D, you solve? And the other one is I can't understand why in some sentence we use no and in other sentence we use not. For example, no biscuits before dinner. And the other sentence is not suitable for children under 15. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for your question, Kike. Very interesting. One small correction on your voice message. You said, could you or can you answer to me? Better to say, answer me or answer for me. We're answering the question for you. Reza, any comments?
Well, your first question, you said, it's stuffy in here. Shall I open the window? And the other person says...
Let's look at stuffy first. What does stuffy mean?
Stuffy is cargado. Mm-hmm. Stuffy is cargado. The answer would be do, as you said. Why? Good question. Any ideas, Craig?
Well, the auxiliary verb here, I think, is used for emphasis. Shall I open the window? Yes, do. Do open the window. So do it. So because it's the present simple, the auxiliary verb you commonly use with present simple is do, does. Shall I open the window? Yes, do.
Yes, for emphasis. And besides, we don't usually use shall in the positive form for suggestions. Shall is a question. Shall I help you? Shall I open the window? Shall we go to the cinema? But it's not typical to say, I shall go to the cinema. Or we shall. No. Nuh-uh. Shall is usually in the question form. If it's a suggestion, shall I open the window, for example?
And be careful of the pronunciation of shall, Kike. The vowel sound, the a in shall, is the same as in words like cat, hat, sat, that, and, etc. It's the a sound. So shall. You shall.
If you want to practice the word shall, don't go to Belfast because virtually nobody ever uses it. In Belfast, we just say, will I open the window? Which in an English exam will probably be marked as incorrect. Mm-hmm. But that's what people say in Belfast. So if you want to practice it properly, stay away from Belfast, my hometown.
And one final thing, Kike, why isn't the correct answer? Be careful of your word order. Why isn't this the correct answer? Or why isn't it the correct answer. Be careful of the order of those words.
You had a second question, which we're going to look at in a bit more detail, about negatives. But just before we do, Kike, let me just say something about your pronunciation. We understood you, but your pronunciation could be a bit better of the word biscuits. The U is not pronounced. Biscuits. And also the word suitable. Biscuits and suitable. They're very often mispronounced. Biscuits and suitable.
And biscuits is a very important word because we all love biscuits, especially in this house. We love biscuits. So when can we use no and when can we use not? Let's look at no first. And one example of when you should use no is when you're answering a yes or no question. For example, Reza, would you like another biscuit?
Yes, I'd love one, please.
And the opposite?
No, I've had enough, thanks.
Yeah. So with a yes or no question, just use no. So that's quite simple, right? Are you cold? No, not really. Are you thirsty? No.
So the first thing you usually say is yes or no. You might add something after that, but the first word is usually yes or no.
So Reza, can you think of another situation or another example of when we can use no apart from yes or no questions?
Well, as Craig has demonstrated, the word no goes before a noun and it has no article. The article is the word a or an or the. For example, no biscuits before dinner. No biscuits before dinner. You can't eat biscuits before dinner. No biscuits. So the word biscuits is a noun. And we don't have any article like the or a or an or even some. Just no biscuits.
And another example, where are my keys? I have no idea where your keys are. If you have no idea, then there's no article, so it's just no idea. Do you know where they are? No, I have no idea.
Craig, by the way, what do you call a deer with no eyes?
No idea.
Correct. That's a very old joke. Very, very old.
What do you call a deer with no eyes that's not moving?
Still no idea. Look, these jokes are ancient. We apologize. They're terrible.
The word no can also be used before a noun, un sustantivo, that is preceded by an adjective. For example, we have no bad reviews on iTunes. The adjective is bad, the noun is reviews, so no bad reviews. By the way, iTunes is now called Apple Podcasts. I keep forgetting that iTunes has been renamed Apple Podcasts. So we have no bad reviews on Apple Podcasts. We have no one-star reviews. So that's another example of using no before a noun that has an adjective before it.
By the way, I'm getting off the point here, but I'm sure there's a lot of Apple, lots of things now. Apple Podcasts, Apple this, that, and the other.
Apple Pies.
Apple Pies. But if you Google Apple Records, you might be surprised what you'll find. Do you know what you'll find if you Google Apple Records?
Well, that was the record label of the Beatles.
Exactly. That's what you'll find.
Yeah.
There was a huge court case about that.
I remember.
With the Beatles and Apple. They're not the greatest of friends.
No.
Let's say. So Apple Records, as far as I know, is still the property of the Beatles. It's nothing to do with iPhones and all that, believe it or not.
So I said before to use no when there's an adjective before a noun. However, with words like any, much, many, or enough, use not. For example, there isn't enough sugar in this coffee. Sugar is the noun, isn't enough sugar. So isn't is not. There is your not contracted. There isn't enough sugar in this coffee. Or there aren't any bad reviews on Apple Podcasts. Aren't are not. There aren't any bad reviews on Apple Podcasts. So when you see any, much, many, or enough, use not.
Yes, as Craig said, with words like any, much, many, or enough, we use not. Some of you might remember what they're called. They're called determiners. If you want to find out more about determiners, and different types of words, parts of speech, listen to episode 194. 194. So before determiners, any, much, many, enough, use not.
So when are the other reasons for using not? Well, use not before a noun that has an article. As Reza said, an article, words like the, a, an. For example, I'm leaving my job, but the poor salary or the bad salary is not the reason for me leaving. Okay? The low salary, the bad salary is not the reason for me leaving. So use not before a noun that has an article.
Not makes a verb negative. That's the main use of not. For example, I don't want to work this afternoon.
Me neither.
But we have to, unfortunately.
After this podcast, we're both teaching, but we don't want to work this afternoon.
Or Pepito's not coming to class today. Pepito's not, he is not coming. We're using not with a verb. In the first case, it was present simple, I don't want. And in the second case, it's present continue. Pepito's not coming. It doesn't matter what the tense is. If you want to make a verb negative, use not.
So those are the three cases for not before a noun that has an article, before words like any, much, many, or enough, and to make a verb negative. If you want to see these rules or guides or tips, go to the show notes at inglespodcast.com/199.
I tell you what, let's test you a little bit. Let's see if you can figure out two ways of saying the same thing.
Okay.
Applying the rules about no and not that we just talked about.
You testing me or you testing the listener?
This is for the listeners.
Okay.
This is for the listeners. So we'll give you a little pause and see if you can get the answer. Let's start off. Do you know another way of saying this? I have no money. I'm using the word no there because it's going before a noun, money. I have no money. What's the other way to say that?
You could also say, I don't have any money. Or I don't have money. I don't have any money. So there's the not contracted with do. I do not have any money.
In the first example, we used the word no because it went before the noun. But in Craig's example, we used a negative not because it was a verb I don't have. Here's another. She had no friend to turn to.
She didn't have any friend to turn to. Or she didn't have a friend to turn to. So there we're using not to negate or make negative the present simple. She didn't have a friend to turn to.
Here's one more to practice. They'll confide in nobody. So rather than the word no here, I'm using a word which contains the word no, which is nobody. They'll confide in nobody.
They won't confide in anybody. So we've got the auxiliary verb will, here used for the future. The negative of will is won't, will not. And nobody changes to anybody because you shouldn't have two negatives together. So they'll confide in nobody or they won't confide in anybody.
Yes, that's a very important point Craig's made. No double negatives in English. So if you use the negative of the verb not, you cannot also use the word no. You can't have both together. And not only that, but any word containing a negative no. So if I use a negative verb not, I cannot say nobody or nothing or nowhere. I have to change it to anybody or anything or anywhere. You can't have no or a word with no and not together. No double negatives in English.
Unless your name is Mick Jagger, in which case you can say things like, I can't get no satisfaction. And now it's your turn to practice your English. You can send us a voice message and tell us what you think. Do you have any ideas or comments for our next episode, which is episode 200. We're really excited to be answering your questions and celebrating 200 podcasts. So if you would like to ask us anything that's not connected to English, send your voice messages by SpeakPipe. Go to speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Reza, how can people contact us by email?
By email, you can get in touch with Craig at inglespodcast.com.
Or to Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com. And we'd like to thank our gold sponsor on Patreon, Bruno, who runs walking tours of Copenhagen through his company, CopenhagenWalkingTour.com. Get to know that beautiful city with castle tours and walking tours in English or in Spanish, CopenhagenWalkingTour.com. Also, find out all about the favela area of Rio de Janeiro, which is led by local guides. It's a very safe and informative tour, and it also helps the community to improve on their daily necessities. So that is favelawalkingtour.com/BR, and those links to Bruno's websites can be found in the show notes.
Also in the show notes, you'll find the names of all our patrons on Patreon who we'd like to thank, who are Beatriz, Pedro, Maite, Lara, Rafa, Nestor Garcia Mañez on nestorgm.com, the Luces Extraña site, Maria, Lorena, Sara Jarabo, Carlos Garrido, Mamen, Juan Leva, Cory Finneran at ivenv.com, Mirin, Jose Luis, Agus, Mariel, Manuel García, Jorge Jiménez, Raúl López, Rafael, Manuel Tarazona, José Manuel, Juan Carlos, Pilar Martínez, Gambate Blog, Ana Giovanna, Igor, Ignacio, Kieran, Carlos García, Pachi Ibáñez, and Ana Ibarra, and our latest patrons, Dana Constantin and Maria Ortez Pena. A big thanks to all of you.
And thanks, of course, to Patricia Alonso, who has been transcribing episodes for you on our website. We now have episodes transcribed number 1 to number 18 and numbers 131 to 142. If you would like more than that, extra transcriptions, then why not join our Patreon program for as little as $1 per month, the price of a cup of coffee, and you get instant access to recent transcriptions of our podcasts, lovingly translated by Angelica Bello from Madrid. The address for our Patreon program is patreon.com/Inglespodcast. Next week, of course, our celebratory 200th episode, on which you can ask us anything. We look forward to speaking to you then. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.